Warning: the following podcast is intended for mature audiences and does contain spoilers. If you are sensitive to anything in particular, I recommend looking up this film on doesthedogdie.com. It is a user-submitted database that is filled with all sorts of different trigger warnings and content warnings for people who may be sensitive to those things. Check it out and take care of yourself. Welcome back to We Creeps, the podcast where you can get all of your spooky without any of the scares. I am your host, Evan Exhumed, and every week I provide an in-depth summary, review, and trivia for the latest horror releases, classics, and some weird ones you probably never heard of. This week I will be covering the queer horror film Swallowed, directed by Carter Smith. This film stars Cooper Poach, Jose Colon, Jenna Malone, and Mark Patton. I am really a big fan of queer horror as a queer person myself, and I think just throughout history in horror there have been a lot of queer coding and queer elements, especially in films such as Chucky, famously written, directed by a gay man. And I think it's just a really interesting subgenre of horror to explore, and anytime I can get my hands on one, I really like to dig deep and sort of explore the themes and whatnot. And the first episode that I ever did on the show was queer horror, which is The Perfection. So I'm really excited to do this one. So let's go ahead and get started on the summary portion of the podcast.
There will be no test.
Why do you get to decide that?
Because I'm the fucking supreme.
The film opens up with our two main characters, Benjamin and Dom. Benjamin is planning to move to Los Angeles to become a gay porn star, and Dom is his longtime childhood friend who is totally not into him, 0%, definitely isn't in love with him. And so Dom tells him, hey, I know that the company that you're going to work for is paying for everything, but they're going to want that back, so I want to leave you with a little bit of a nest egg. And so Dom takes Benjamin in his car to go meet up with his, quote, cousin. So turns out it actually is his cousin, and he was going to pick up some drugs from her and cross them over or deliver them somewhere in order to give his totally just a friend buddy Ben some money before he goes to California, which is a nice gesture if it didn't involve Ben. However, when they get there, they see that there is another person there, not his cousin, named Alice. His cousin is super fucked up and drugged out or drunk in the car that Alice was in. And so Alice is like, look, this is my run. I'm the one who gave her the drugs. You're going to do this with me or you're not going to get paid. So the goal is to take the drugs, go across the Canadian border, and then call Alice once the job's complete, and then they get that money. However, Alice is like, yeah, also you're going to have to shove all these drugs up your butt. And Dom and Ben are like, we don't really want to do that. So they decide to leave, and she comes up with a gun and says, nope, you're going to shove these up your butt, and you're going to cross Canada, and then I'm going to pay you, and things are going to go my way. Actually, correction, she says she's going to force them to eat them. So they eat the little drug bags. They eat most of them. And it's pretty painful to watch. I mean, these are, it's like forcing yourself to swallow things that are definitely not food. They're in little plastic bags. So it's a rough little watch to see him gulp most of these down. So while he's trying to eat these little bags of drugs, he sees his cousin get out of Alice's car and start throwing up. So Dom goes to check on her. And while this is happening, Alice then, at gunpoint, forces Ben to swallow some of the drugs as well. So, of course, Ben is a little mad. He was really excited to go be a porn star in LA and just have things go real smoothly. And now he's got drugs in his stomach and has to go across the Canadian border and deliver them. So, I can understand why he would be a little bit mad about that. So Dom and Ben are able to get past the border, and they stop at a little gas station to empty their bowels. But before they do that, they have a little bit of a romantic moment here, where Dom reveals that he's loved Ben more than he's loved any other woman he's dated. And Ben's like, oh my God, but you're straight. And he's like, I don't know about that, actually. And he's like, the only reason I haven't fucked you is because I love you so much. And Ben's like, oh my God, wow. And this moment is interrupted by Dom having to evacuate his bowels. So he runs into the gas stop bathroom to do so. So Ben goes to check up on Dom, and then this like weird homophobic redneck comes in and is like, "What are you two doing? Probably touching each other's peepees." And they're like, "No, we're just trying to take a shit." And the redneck guy's like, "I bet you want to suck my dick too." And they're like, "No, we're just trying to take a shit." And so Dom comes out of the bathroom and gets really angry. It's like, "Fuck off, you know, you homophobe." And the redneck punches him in the fucking stomach, the stomach that is filled with drugs, and bad things happen. So Dom starts holding his stomach, moving around, and we can safely assume that one of the bags has tore or broken inside of him. So Dom poops out one of the bags, and it's clean, so don't worry. I do feel like this does kind of hit the balancing act of poop horror, which is a pretty rare horror that I don't encounter a lot. I feel like most directors are too afraid to add any kind of butthole or poop elements to their horror, which is fair. Nobody really likes to see that. But this movie really does a balancing act here of that. But we see that inside the little bag is like a fucking weird, big maggot type creature or something that's like crawling around. So this shit just ain't drugs. This is some kind of weird alien bug thing. So just as he's about to call the cops, Ben has a gun pointed at him by Alice, who I guess has been tracking or following them this entire time because she didn't trust them. And she's like, "What the hell are you doing trying to call the cops?" And he's like, "Well, dude, he needs a hospital. Look at him. He's fucked up." And as she looks at him, he has like a raging boner. And I guess the drug that, leaked into his system, like gives you a giant boner that comes up later. But yeah, so there's just a giant penis on the screen at this point. So Alice is like, "Look, I'll take you guys to a hospital after we do this delivery. This is fucked up situation, but I'm not going to let you die." Oh yeah, and the redneck guy also slashed their tires, so they were kind of stranded anyway. During the drive to the delivery, Ben obviously asks, "What the fuck are these things?" And she's like, "You know how people lick toads to get high? Well, this is kind of like that, but these are bugs. I guess when they hatch and they bite you, they get you super fucked up and high." These are not real bugs, by the way. These are like some kind of weird new bug that the movie created. So yeah, it's really trippy to see these. They almost look alien when I saw them. So they end up going to this little cabin that I guess her boss owns, Alice's boss. And they wheelbarrow Dom into the room, and she's like, "Look, we're going to sit here until he shits all of these out." And so she gets a phone call, and Ben is like, "Who the hell is that?" It's like, "You're going to find out. The boss is coming." So Alice kind of starts to panic the fact that her boss is actually coming here, and it sounds like he's not very happy. She then points a gun at Ben and hands him a bottle of Vaseline and says, "Put your hand up his ass and get the rest of the drugs." I'm not 100% sure this is how that works, but that's what they're going for. So they're able to get some of the drug bags out of his butt. And then the boss comes in, whose name is Rich. And he's basically kind of like a off-brand Joe Exotic. Like he comes straight in with the same kind of outfit, kind of cowboy-y. He's just like, "Well, what's going on in here? Who are these two beautiful boys?" And I gotta say, this character is so fucking uncomfortable. He provides most of the tension for the rest of the movie. I would say he is definitely the villain more so than Alice. Rich is a huge fucking creep. He starts kind of ogling the two boys. Alice tells him how many drug bags there are, including the one inside Ben. And Rich is like, "I might just have to get that one myself." And he's just really fucking creepy. And so he grabs the gun and tells Benjamin to keep pulling the bags out of Dom. As he's getting the last little bag out of Dom, Rich tells Alice that she can leave, and Alice doesn't seem like she wants to, but she does, and she kind of looks back, and there's some regret in there. She definitely feels bad for these young men. As Benjamin gets the last bag out, we can see that multiple have popped. The worms are really creepy and gross looking, and that's really not good for Dom. So Alice ends up coming back after they get the last bags, and she's like freaking out at Rich, saying like, "We can't have this happen. We can't have these people die." And they start arguing, and they end up leaving the house to argue more. Dom looks like he's dead, but he does start coughing, so he is alive for just a little bit at least. Just long enough for Benjamin to look into Dom's eyes and Dom to look into his and give one final kiss sort of solidifying that they both did really love each other. But unfortunately, Dom does succumb to the drug effects from the worms and dies. I was really upset about this because Dom is a really sweet guy overall. He's cute and he dies in a pretty miserable way. I mean, the drugs do make you feel really good, but still, it's just so fucking sad. After Dom dies, Benjamin is really upset. He's asking, please don't leave me. And as this is happening, we hear a gunshot, implying that Rich has now killed Alice. Rich comes in looking a little bit upset and claims that Alice pulled a knife on him. And he's just like, we should just totally just try to get past this. I'm not a bad person, I promise. And he just kind of gives some crocodile tears here. And suddenly Rich has a total, mood change and says, you know what, I should run you a hot bath. And, that way you'll get the last bit of drugs out. I can start us a fire. It's going to be so great. So Rich forces basically, he's not pointing the gun at him, but he's making it very aware that there is a gun on Benjamin. He forces him to undress and go take a bath. While he's in the bathroom, Rich is starting a fire. So Ben looks for any type of weapon. He grabs a pair of tweezers, which are actually, you could really cut somebody with that if you did enough force. So he hides those and gets into the bath. Rich then gives him some whiskey to drink and begins to bathe him. It's super uncomfortable. The tension, you could slice it with a knife, as they say. It's just an incredibly uncomfortable scene here. They have a little bit of a conversation. We learn a little bit more about the drug bugs. I guess they get milked right after they're hatched, and then he laces weed with them, like the joints. And apparently they keep your dick hard for like 9 hours. You feel everything. You feel amazing. It's kind of like ecstasy almost. And so that's the purpose of these bugs specifically. So he gets out of the bath and says he has to pee. He goes outside to pee, but also to check Alice. And he sees that she does not actually have a knife. So he was just lying. He just killed her for no reason, other than to probably cover his ass. Rich then tells a pissing Benjamin that he's just going to go ahead and give him the $15,000. He can go to LA and become a porn star, and they can just put the whole thing behind them. I think there's a sort of insinuation that he'll do this only if he has sex with him, in my opinion. Like, obviously, he's not just going to do this for free. So then they go back inside. Rich hands him the $15,000 just in cash. And while this is happening, he's like, hey, I really like your jacket. Do you think I could try it on, Rich? And he's like, oh, of course you can try it on, pretty boy. And so he puts it on and then pockets the tweezers that he had earlier. And as Rich is starting to adjust the jacket on him, saying it looks so good on him, he pulls the tweezers out and stabs Richard in the neck with it, allowing him to sort of get away and at least have a distraction. He then runs to the cars because there are keys in the pocket of the jacket, which is also really smart, but none of the cars seem to work with those keys, so it was likely just the keys to the cabin. Meanwhile, Rich is running around the forest, screaming, firing randomly, looking for Ben, calling him slurs. Just, not a very nice man ever. Ben ends up hiding for a bit and he poops out the last of the insects that are in the bag, and they have hatched, but thankfully they did not break the bag. So he sneaks back to the cabin to get the little sneak attack on Rich here. And so he picks up a fireplace poker and starts to strangle Rich with it, overpowering him and allowing himself to get the gun. And he throws him on the floor and straddles him with the gun to his head. And then he forces him to be bitten by these fucking little slug worm things, which are going to fuck him up immensely. The worms also seem to paralyze you a little bit. So this does work effectively as a way to paralyze the bad guy. So after this happens, he ends up carrying Dom's body to the river and he cleans him off, shows that body that respect it deserves. And he lets his body go off into the river kind of with nature, sort of symbolizing, his farewell to this lover, this person, and this life that he's walking away from. He then returns to the cabin and drags Rich all the way to the outhouse. He then shoves Rich's entire body into the outhouse, essentially drowning him in shit. This is truly poop horror. I feel like this might be one of the first real avant-garde poop horror that we've experienced, because drowning in an outhouse is a really terrible way to die, especially when you're still fully conscious but can't move. The movie then ends with the title card appearing for the first time. In the very beginning, we actually didn't get to see a title card. It just showed the names of the actors who were the main characters. So that's kind of interesting. It starts with the song and it shows the production company and the actors, and then the whole movie goes on, and then the title card happens at the very end of the movie. We do get a little post-title card credit scene thing, though, showing what happens to Benjamin. So we see him being interviewed at what is called the Squirty Awards. So he's become a successful porn star. He's wearing the jacket that he took from Rich. I guess it's his signature or something. And he's changed his name from Benjamin to Benji Dom. So he took Dom's name and made it his last name for his porn star name, which is really sweet and also kind of heartbreaking. So then the movie actually fully ends with that. Now, with the summary portion out of the way, let's go ahead and get started on the review portion.
You watch porn? He says, yeah.
I gotta say, if it's not obvious, I really did like this movie. I thought that the character development was incredible. The acting between all four of the main cast members was really great. The emotion between the two leads. I mean, there was a lot that I really enjoyed. And I think that with queer horror, there's sort of this idea that every piece of queer horror needs to be fully representative, needs to be perfect. But I just feel like this movie just was a film that happened to be queer. And I love that. I feel like with a lot of queer media and queer film, there is this sort of motivation or feeling the need to say something really profound or have some really large, deep themes. But I feel like this movie, while it probably does have some pretty deep themes, I feel like this is truly just sort of a queer story. This is just two people who got into a really bad situation, and we just sort of see how that bad situation unfolds. And I just loved it. I mean, I think it's a good film. I think if you can stomach a little bit of body horror, I mean, they don't really show any of the explicit stuff. It's more inferred, which I thought was really good. But it did definitely make my butt clench a few times, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a rating of 4 out of 5. I think it's a really great film. It's solid. It doesn't necessarily bring anything crazy new to the table, but it's just a damn good film. And if you can stomach it, definitely check it out. With the review portion finished, let's go ahead and get started on Trick or Trivia.
The woman's just obsessed with me.
Trivia number 1, the actor who plays Ben, Cooper Coach, actually played the jock character in They/Them, a movie that I covered a few months ago. So he's definitely no stranger to queer horror. Trivia number 2, the film was actually shot in chronological order, which is not common at all in film. Usually they do things by set and, do things in different order and whatnot, but this was all filmed in chronological order, which is kind of cool. Trivia number 3, most of the film was shot in rural or off-the-grid areas of Maine. They didn't really have access to electricity, internet, self-service, or flushing toilets. The director, Carter Smith, did say it was kind of nice, though, because nobody was really distracted with phones. They could be really focused on the movie itself. That's all the trivia I have for you this week, so join us again next week for more Trick or Trivia. Thank you so much for joining me again for another week of horror movie summaries, trivia, and reviews. If you can't get enough of the podcast, definitely check out my TikTok and my Instagram. I'm the most active there. I post some pretty funny and niche horror memes that if you're a true fan, a big fan, or even a little fan, I think you'll really enjoy them. So again, go to WeCreeps.com. You can find all my links and my socials there. If you want to support me directly so I can stop doing this stupid office job, go ahead and subscribe to my Patreon. You get episodes a day early. We also have merch, which you can find at tpublic.com, link in the link tree as well, or on WeCreeps.com. They have shirts, mugs, whatever you want to get. It's all size inclusive. And if for some reason you don't like the way the shirt feels, it feels kind of gross or scratchy, and you've got sensory issues, just go ahead and send them an email and they'll try to figure out something that'll work better for you. I love their customer service. I love how size inclusive they are. They're great. Check it out. Don't forget to tune in next week, where I will be covering a holiday movie as well as the following week because it's the holidays. So don't forget to spend time with your loved ones, and also do not forget to stay spooky out there.